Today, we're breaking our own rule. So guys, if you've been watching us for any amount of time, you know that one of the steadfast rules is do not spray your signs with anything other than primer or flat or matte finish. Satin and gloss is a no-go, but today we're gonna do that. So one of the reasons you don't want to use gloss or satin finish is because it's gonna bleed into the board really bad. But if you're doing a rustic look like we're doing for this Halloween sign, it really doesn't matter. For this sign, we're using our stencil of the month for October 2024. This is the cat pumpkin. And if you don't know what these are, we have memberships, premium and executive, and you get free templates, free stencils, router bit sharpening, all kinds of stuff. I'll leave a link in the description below so you can head over to the website and check that out. And we're also using our 2-inch creepy font. This is a seasonal font. You can only get this in October. So if you want to get this, you can check out the link below. It'll be tagged in the video, and head over to the website and get these as well. But remember, October only. Everything else we're using is on the website as well, makeawoodsign.com. Let's get started. For this sign, we're using a piece of 18 by 18 blue pine that we glued up a while back. Now I want both of my lines to be arched. I want the top line to be arched downward and the bottom line to be arched upward. So to do that, I'm putting a letter at the top and bottom in the middle where the lowest point of the arch is going to be. Then I'm marking it with my adjustable square to make sure I have even space on the top and bottom. Then what I'm going to do is with the top line, I'm going to mark the bottom of one of the letters because that's where the arch is going to be, so I can line it up on that. Once I do that, then I just put my arch on and measure and make sure I have equal distance on each side. So for this one, I think it was like 4 1/4, something like that. But the arches really do make it a lot easier to do this sort of sign. Without it, you have to find something that has the angle you're looking for, and it gets really confusing. Once I have all my letters on there, then I just space them equally left to right, and then I space the stencil in between those lines and make sure everything's symmetrical. Then once it's all in place, all I got to do is spray it with my primer. And with this sign, I don't really have to worry about overspraying. The first bit I used is the profile bit at 3/16 of an inch deep, and I did about 95% of this sign with just the profile bit. So the creepy font is a little bit different than a lot of our other fonts. Normally when doing inset letters, we use our 60 degree. But because the creepy font has several points and a lot of sharp ends, it would have been really difficult to get those with the 60 degree. The profile bit works perfect. Now I was kind of torn. I didn't know if I should do the entire thing with the profile bit. You can see there's areas left in the middle of the letters. I was going to go back with the 60 degree bit, but that I think is still a little bit too big. So what I ended up doing is going around the entire letter with the profile bit at 3/16, and once that's done and I get all of my cutting done at 3/16 of an inch deep, I'm going to drop that same profile bit down to 1/4 of an inch deep and give myself a wider and a deeper cut. And if there's anything left over, I'll just chip it out with that same bit. Now carving the stencil was a lot of fun, but it can get sort of confusing. If you're looking at the stencil and you're trying to carve out like the tree and the cat and the bat individually, it can get really confusing. So what I decided to do is I'm actually focusing on going around everything I need to go around. So I'm just doing one piece at a time. You can see that I'm actually carving around each individual black piece instead of carving the cat or the bat or whatever. When you do something like this, it's really easy to kind of get lost in what you're trying to do. Kind of like those books from the 90s, those 3D books. You can't look at just the picture, you have to look at the whole thing. This is the opposite. You don't want to look at the whole thing. You want to look at each individual piece that needs to be carved. It's like that old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One piece at a time. Same thing here. Now there's a lot of lines that were a little bit thicker than the profile bit, and I just went on each side. I went on the outside of it and the inside of it. I wasn't too worried about anything left over because I'm going to drop the profile bit and come back and redo it. That will actually save a lot of time instead of trying to get it all at the same time at 3/16 of an inch deep. Again, it is an extra step, but it's going to save you time in the long run. A tip that we don't talk about enough is you'll notice that my arms are resting on the bench and my hands are resting on the board. I don't have a death grip on the router. I'm just kind of gently holding it with a few fingers and guiding it. It's not going to run away from you, so you don't need to hold a death grip on that thing. Now that all my initial profile work is done, I'm going to drop it down to 1/4 of an inch deep, and I'm going to go in and take out everything that's left inside. Except for the big areas. I'm going to use a different bit for that. But what you don't want to do when you're doing something like this is just go in and kind of randomly take it out. I'm actually going to carve over everything again. So I'm going to go around the outside of the letter, and then I'm going to go back in around the inside of the letter. And that's going to take out the majority of the wood in there. And where there are a little bit bigger areas, then I do kind of a random pattern and take all that stuff out. So you can see I'm tracing each letter, and even on the stencil, I'm doing the same thing I did before. And the majority of that wood will get taken out. And on the big areas, it's going to give me plenty of room to go back in with my 90-degree bit and do our standard textured background. As a little PSA for all you carvers out there, if your bits are getting dull faster, clean them in between signs. It doesn't take much, and it really helps to save the edge on your bit. When you have more buildup on there, it's going to create a lot more heat, and then your bits are going to dull way faster than they actually have to. So don't forget, every once in a while, just take a small brass wire brush and clean your bits. The next bit I'm using is our 90-degree bit at 1/4 of an inch deep. And this is really simple. This only took, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes because there's not a whole lot of big areas in this stencil. I just went in and I took out all of the extra wood to give myself that good, clean, textured background. Now, one thing about something like this is there's going to be a lot of small areas too. So make sure that you double check before you spray that you got everything out. It's always a good idea to give it a once over and take out any high spots that you might have missed and or forgot. Because the whole theme of this sign is Halloween and kind of creepy and spooky and all that stuff, I didn't want to do just a chamfered edge. So what we ended up doing is I clamped the sign on the edge of the table and I just roughed up the edge with a disc sander. Now if you don't have a disc sander, you can use a grinder too, but that's going to take wood off a lot faster, so definitely be careful. But this disc sander did a great job. I will say it roughs up the discs pretty bad, so one disc will do one sign, and that's about it. You just want to be careful not to get too close to the letters or actually end up grinding into the letters, because that looks a little weird. I've tried it before and I wasn't a big fan. So you can see where I have more room, I'm grinding more. Where I have less room, I'm grinding less, and it actually ends up with a really cool look that matches the theme of this sign. Now here's where all the rules go out the window. So normally when I spray a sign, I spray the edges and the carving black, but I only spray what I want black to be black, if that makes sense. And I try not to overspray. But with this, first of all, that orange I'm using is a Rust-Oleum gloss, and second of all, I'm doing 2 different colors. Normally when I do that, I tape stuff off, spray one color, then tape the rest off and spray another color. But with this, I wanted everything to blend. So I ended up just kind of letting the overspray go where it wanted to go. And there's no real way I can tell you how much to spray of what color. It's just whatever you think looks good. So notice all the bare areas, I'm actually spraying black too. So the whole sign is black, and then I'm kind of giving some orange accent. Now this stuff took a long time to dry, so just be prepared to have a little bit more time. The primer dries in a couple minutes. This stuff took about 45 minutes, and I just sprayed till I thought it was enough. I probably could have done a little more, to be honest with you. Now for the sanding portion, I took off maybe 60% of the black and the orange with the disc sander, but I wanted it to have that old rustic look, so I definitely didn't take everything off, which is why you can use gloss or satin on a sign like this. Then I smoothed everything out with a random orbital and a 120 grit, and I am really happy with how it looks. Then I added about 5 coats of Rust-Oleum clear on it, and I'm assuming this will be an indoor sign, but even if it's outdoors for the month of October, this stuff will work just fine for that. So there it is, you guys. Now I'm pretty happy with the way it came out. I wish the orange was a little bit brighter, but that's one nice thing. If you're doing something like this and you don't care about bleeding, the colors kind of open up to you. You can get whatever you want. But that's really only for something like this where you're leaving some of the paint on. Now for Halloween, this is perfect. If somebody wants a nice clean sign where all you see is the grain, stick with the primer, the flat, or the matte finish. Anything gloss or satin, it is not going to work out well. Something else too is that this stuff took a lot longer to dry. Our primer dries in like 2 or 3 minutes out in the sun, but this stuff we let it set for about 45 minutes before we could sand it off. So guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Remember, everything we use is on the website, so go check out makeawoodsign.com, and happy Halloween.